roll call for us, Becca, please.
Sure. Brian Benema,
Here.
Christine Pfaff. Here. Monica McHugh. Here. Emerita Keys. Here. Sandra Gerlach. Here. Tom Stewart.
Yes.
Mike Burke.
Here. Then everybody had a chance to look at the March 10th, 2025 meeting minutes. And we have any discussion or corrections?
I'll move to approve.
Second. Motion to approve and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No one, okay. Okay, we'll move on to Laura's presentation. Good evening, Laura.
Well, we can't hear you.
Now we can't hear you.
No, I really can't hear
Good
you.
evening.
There you go. Oh, you were just doing turnabouts as fair play. But let me share my screen with,
Okay,
here. Do that, and Laura, can you see my screen?
I cannot.
Not. Yeah, we should be good.
Yes, I can see it now. Okay, so for this evening's work session, we're going to look at all of the zoning district chapters. This is a review of the A1 agricultural district. We've made some changes on that as we've worked through the residential, commercial, and the 2 industrial districts. And I've just keep the schedule there so you kind of see how we're doing. We can go on to the first chapter, the A1, Lori. So what I did, could you go back just a second, please, Lori? Each of the districts has a cover letter. I'm using that to try to make it easier to break up the packet for you and kind of give you a summary. So this is what we'll use as our separator at this point. Hopefully this works. As I mentioned, you've seen this particular district before. We've made some changes, but it also includes pretty much the template that you'll see on the other districts. Okay, Lori, thanks. We can go to the next page, which starts the red line. So anything that's in red that you remember, this is something that's being revised. If it's being moved from somewhere else, we try to leave it in that black font. So the big changes for all of the districts are these kind of tables. It lists the uses and the required parking and the regulations. And Laura, you can just slowly scroll through this. If people have any questions, we can pause and take a look at anything that anyone has a question on. Or Lori, I know you have some comments and questions too, so make sure we stop where if you have any.
Yeah, I threw all of mine on the clean. Do you want me to address them here on the red, or do you want me to wait till
No,
we
I
get?
think it might be easier on the clean.
Okay, that's
I-
where
It's up to you, but
I
there's
prefer
a
to
lot.
wait till there, because that's where
Yeah.
I have one.
So if you want to go to the next page then. And then the next one. Basically, that was just trying to put all of those uses into a table. We then did the same thing with the accessory uses as we did principal. And then when we come to special exceptions, we've tried to organize these in an outline format. We've also trying to make sure that as we go from district to district, the language is the same. So Lori, you can go through this. I think the only one with a real change is going to be on page 7, which is the first draft of the cell phones. So Lori and I have been working on this. There's still probably going to be some more information, but for right now, we've got a set of requirements that Lori's worked on, and we're kind of borrowing things from the new wind ordinance in terms of item number, letter F, discontinuation, catastrophic failure, and decommissioning regulations. We can pause here if you want to go into the cell phone tower language in more detail, or we can address that separately.
No, we can do that. But hang on, I just gotta make sure I'm on the right spot. Cause that's number 10. So, some of the things that I had, pulled off, one of the things too, I'm not sure we need to be so concerned with is on the cell phone towers, is the 5 miles of the, of a fire station. So we might change that. Just part of the reason is we, historically, that's never been a concern. And I don't know why, I know there's other things that could be, but cell tower, and communications towers, I don't believe that we probably need number B in there. What's the commission? Do you guys think we should strike that or can strike that, or it's gonna, I'm using the clean version, you guys on page.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'd
okay,
say
maybe
for the
we,
clean version, I'm not matching up here.
Yeah,
why don't we wait till we get to that, Lori, because I'm having trouble too.
Yeah,
Let's
let's
go
do
ahead
that.
and walk through it.
okay,
We go to the next page then?
okay, I'm good with that, Lauren.
Okay, we can go ahead to the next page. You've seen these before, the next one. We still, this is pretty much the same. The development regulations, we're still working on this table. The signs we're also still working on. We had some questions last month. We're still working on those. So that pretty much is the red version, Laura. If we want to go into the next page, it'll start clean version. And then if you want to take us through your questions here.
Okay, so you can see the table she set up for the district as far as parking spaces and those type of requirements, and then where you find the definition of each thing. And then when we get down to
I have one quick question.
yes, ma'am.
On the table for elder group home, family group home, why do we only do a half parking space per dwelling unit?
Typically, the residents do not drive. Only the caretaker or on-site manager will have a vehicle.
Would we want to require one space per dwelling unit then? I understand the reason for the half space, but why would we not want to require one?
You can if you want it. Typically, these don't have a lot of parking, but if you feel better having one space per unit, that's easy to do.
The elder group home also an assisted living facility where some of those people still drive. Would that be covered under the elder care group home?
I don't think so. These tend to be small and located within neighborhoods and act like a single family home. Assisted living, we would have a larger facility with more staff and would definitely need a different parking ratio.
That's not specified, does that need to be specified?
Maybe, for example, it'd be like one of the deck houses.
yes,
Well, yeah, I'm figuring the elder care is basically a nursing home where people aren't driving, but everything else is fine, I don't
yeah,
know.
both of these, the elder home group, elder group home and the family group home are specifically in the Iowa code to be treated as a single family dwelling. So we would want to look at allowing assisted living or nursing care facilities as a separate use, so that we wouldn't get into conflict with the way the state law says we need to deal with these. These are typically a small number of residents with one or more live-in caretakers, administrators, for the residents.
I guess I get that, but if you're having kennel and riding stable and every other thing, no demand with parking ratios, why something like that's not in there?
Why something like what's not in
An
there?
assisted living facility or where, I mean, I know a lot of those people, they have garage units or they have like, condo
Well-
type units as well as apartments.
Here's why. We're in A1. The ordinance currently tries to be very careful about the number of units in the residential dwellings in this district. If we want to allow for those types of uses, I highly recommend we look at residential zoning and not agricultural.
Do we have any in the county, other than the DAC home, the old county home? Do we have any other of these residential or, elder family group homes that are in the county?
The only one I'm gonna know of, the big one is gonna be the old county home. And as far as the regular DAC houses, what we call, most of those, I can't think of any that are
City
rural.
limits,
They're all
right?
within city limits.
Yeah,
So the only place that would be, and it's set up more nursing home style.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there a better word for that these days? But
is the county home.
the county home's set up more like that, like nursing home style. Yeah, and there's certain things that aren't here. This part of it is. Okay, we worked on the comprehensive plan together, and part of that was to keep growth in one spot or close to services. I mean, as a rule, they're not gonna put a nursing home 5 miles away or 10 miles away from an ambulance garage.
Right.
As a rule. Now, the the county home's been there for decades.
Right, no. and
Why? Who
But
knows?
I know, and I understand that, because I mean, like the old county homes, most of them were on farm grounds, and most of them, I mean, I remember years ago, growing up the county home, the residents actually did all of the field work and raised all of their own food, so they were very self-sufficient. So my question is, they've got to be on 2 acres anyway. For like the elder group home and family group home, is that something we want to allow in A1?
I think you might have to allow it wherever you allow a single family dwelling under state law. That's why it's there.
I don't see it really being an issue, because I don't see them expanding outside of city limits. But who knows?
Is that also why the schools are in there too, and under A1?
Are there any schools in Jackson County in the ag
Exactly.
land?
No, but it is allowable use currently
So that's why it's in.
I wish I had my old paper. The shovel paste paper in front of me, so I can.
Okay, I'm asking the question,
Are you-
I'm trying to make sure that we're transparent and complying with Iowa code. And these two uses are ones that need to be treated the same as a single family dwelling. So I'm trying to make sure that they're in districts that allow single family dwellings.
Well, that's what kind of, I understand that with the single family dwelling and that's what kind of sparks the parking per unit. If we're in an ag area, they've gotta be 2 acres. Shouldn't we allow the same parking for those homes that we're mandating for the single family dwellings?
Well, the reason that we could certainly do that, but one of the things we're also trying to do is to minimize the amount of required parking because it tends to be an impervious surface which can impact stormwater runoff. So not requiring the expense of building more parking, trying to minimize that was part of the goal of trying to reorganize the parking requirements so that we hopefully are not making people build more than they need. But we can certainly change that to 1 per dwelling unit. It's very simple to do. It's fine.
Are we creating no extra cost and extra, overhead cost for construction if we do that too?
Maybe a little bit, but maybe they'd want to have the paved surface for additional use, like they could use it for something when it wasn't used as parking. I think that jump from a half to 1 is probably not significant.
So that'll go under, what do you guys want to do? Do you guys want to keep it half? Do you guys want to vote on it? What's your pleasure?
I'm fine with leaving it at 1/2.
Well, that just means that's the minimum. It doesn't mean
They can build it.
restricting it. You can't have more.
Yeah, right, you're right.
And if she's saying that it should match the state, would the state override the county if somebody questioned it?
We're not being more restrictive. We're being less restrictive. We're allowing them more and not taking any away. I mean, if we went to 1,
Are you requiring 1 then?
no, well, depends on what you guys want to require.
But I mean, if we change it to 1, then this is saying we're requiring 1. So we are
Right.
making it more
Well,
restrictive.
we would make it more restrictive.
It's much more, and the costs will just get passed on down to the care of the people in the home.
Mhm.
I also believe we should just leave that.
And that's fine. I was just questioning. I just asked.
Sure.
I'm not gonna,
Discussion.
Well, then while we're discussing, if you guys are ready to move from that one, Laura, one of the questions I questioned was, on the elementary and secondary, schools,
Mm-hmm.
1.5 spaces per employee. I'm sure there's a rationale behind that, but I was trying to figure it out. Okay,
So the numbers that you see here are based on studies that are done across the country by transportation engineers who really get into this kind of stuff. And so I did research on this, and this is the typical typically what these types of schools will generate in terms of the number of parking required or the need for a drop-off for students or something like that. You can see when you get into the secondary school, we have spaces for employees, but we also have spaces for students. And I think the 1.5, again, I can get back to you with the specific research on educational institutions to give you more background if you need it.
Average across the country, or is this average of rural areas, or what?
The information will tell us based on individual uses that were studied where their locations are. I can certainly provide you at the next meeting the information for educational institutions I did the study a year ago and I don't remember. I don't remember all the details,
Different for.
but I'm happy to share that information with you and you can decide then.
Yeah,
It would be different, I mean, I guess the research I'm asking about is that, does it differentiate between a place like Jackson County, which is largely rural, and like Des Moines, a metro area?
If the study included, the study will give us a description of basically where the facilities were. And I'll be happy to share that information with you. They won't always name whether it's a city or not. They might say urban, suburban, or rural, a little more general. But I can certainly get you that information.
that would kind of be important because there's different requirements for schools in Polk County than what there would be in Jackson County.
Well, yeah, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're talking A1
Yeah.
here, and you wouldn't have A1 zoning in a bigger city.
No, you wouldn't.
Okay, can we move on
Yeah.
from that one? Okay. Okay, then the rest goes on for the cemetery, fairgrounds, public campground, recreation, kennels, logging, storage, railroads, public utilities. And this is something new for us, Laura, too, oh, excuse me. Yeah, well, the accessory use structures, that's not new, but the tables are good.
Okay.
Where I started having questions or concerns, and I saw the language somewhere else, and maybe it's just because we were using other language. So when we get down to the special exception uses and structures.
You want to flip to that on the screen for me? If you wouldn't mind, so I know I follow where you're at. Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you. You know how you gotta prod me to turn my page here. So, but under D, under agriculture, and this is where it starts. It's in several pages throughout the ordinance. So number 1A, the business produces no offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odor, heat, glare, or other electrical interference detectable within the limits of the nearest dwelling. That's different language than we've used in the past. And it's the nearest dwelling. If something, let's say, the nearest dwelling is to the south, and we have prevailing north winds, the nearest dwelling might not be the one that's getting the bulk of the effects.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. That sentence is the only condition on ag services in A1 right now. What you just read is existing language. So are you thinking there's language in a different district that I should be looking at?
Oh, detected within the limits of the nearest dwelling. I got my old paper one now.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, I just went back to the red line version. That was the only thing.
that was something that stayed the
That's
same.
the only existing requirement right now. If you don't like it, just we can reword it.
Okay, and well, we've been talking so much about setbacks and about maybe I'm just getting over into it because of all the other stuff we've been dealing with.
So remember, we have tables now for your setbacks that include special exceptions, which is why you're not seeing that necessarily in here.
Okay, right.
If you wanted to have it set back from these, this would be a good spot to put it, well as in that table.
Let's just move past it right now and see where we end up.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay,
Might be overdoing this because of all the other, things that have been crammed into my head. From,
So if you take a look, Lori, there's the sentence in 2A, same language.
yeah, I know, I got it highlighted all the way down.
Okay, so that's your existing language. Doesn't mean we have to keep it though. So no worries.
Yeah,
You
we
just
can,
decide what you want.
we'll go for it right now and just,
Okay.
I'm gonna think about it, and you guys, if you wanna think about what we need to do.
So here's my concern with this and you've got an ag business. So, I mean, we've got some small tractor repair places. No offensive noise. All right, so that's very objective.
Yeah,
Or subjective, yes, the grammar people take care of me.
Grammar police are on the job.
That's
All right.
right, I'm happy for that. So, I mean, that concerns me there.
and I think our setbacks, the more I think about it, those should help us. And I'm gonna give us a real life example. We have a case come before the Board of Adjustment next month. It was a, agricultural equipment repair shop. And I stress the word agricultural. But, the nearest neighbors were literally 150 feet away. And the Board of Adjustment granted the special exception for a repair shop that grinds, welds, pounds, beats. And the one neighbor's house is literally closer to the shop than the homeowner or the property owner's house is. So I think a lot of it is when we're granting those special exceptions, we're more say it for me.
Cognizant.
Thank you, of those things.
Aware.
Then, maybe we were in the past. So maybe some of these things will be, this language probably isn't as bad as what we think because of our awareness about making sure we establish better setbacks from neighboring properties.
So why don't you move down one page? I agree, this language is really subjective and I would hate to be the one having to figure it out at the board meeting. If you go to the next page, that'd be page 4. If you look at commercial feedlots, there's language that talks about separation. So that's certainly easier for the staff person, the Board of Adjustment member, and the applicant to know what's wanted. That other language that we've been discussing, that doesn't really make it clear. So I agree that you're on the right track to try and make this more clear. That's just one example. The next one, mining, has, distances and things like that. So maybe that's something that we want to explore and bring back. Or you want to pick something now and we'll make the change.
With commercial feedlots, though, there's also DNR regulations. And we need,
I'm aware of that. I'm just using their language as an example.
okay,
The next one is 50 feet, so 500 feet, whatever.
And
Yeah.
I want to be careful of those too, because we might be putting, restrictions that are going to be punitive for no good reason.
well, yeah, I mean.
And it is a special exception, so these are all special exception uses. So the Board of Adjustment would be setting up conditions if they needed them. Or should be setting up conditions if they need them.
Right, and like mining and extracting, how many of the quarries are sitting right on the roads? I mean, in Jackson County.
Most of them.
I mean, so.
Yeah.
That one kind of,
But it says the extraction site though.
Yeah, but how many of them are, I mean,
I'd say that some of this is that it might have depended on when they were starting that quarry or excavation operation, but now going forward, this would be something you could also. So this is gonna apply to the new ones. Those others would be grandfathered.
and I understand that, but
Well, the other thing is this has been we could look and see how long this has been in the existing ordinance too. Because your ordinance dates back to 76. I don't know, Lori, if you have a copy of that, but
I have not the 76, but it wasn't updated very much. Mining extraction of minerals and raw materials, including necessary processing equipment, provided that the extraction site shall be located at least 50 feet from any
That's-
property line or public right of way, and no
Right.
closer to 500 foot to any feet to
Okay.
any park school.
so I'm wondering on the clean version if I should be somehow highlighting for you. I hate to do this because it's supposed to be clean, but you know, we're looking right now at existing language. Yeah, all of these, almost none of that is new. The separations are all existing.
and I understand that, but we're going through this right now. Does this mean that, you know, it's been in place for 40 years? Is this really what we want to continue to have?
Well, my question to you would be, what are the problem properties? Are they in any of these categories over time?
Not in my experience.
Because if there aren't problems, the language is probably okay and the regulations are probably working. But it's change. So it's a good conversation to have. But I would definitely say, or if you're getting complaints about any of these things, it would be something that would be really important for the commission to know. And I know a lot of what we're doing is in response to complaints that you've noted, so.
Wait, if you guys, can I move back to page 3?
Mhm.
So under the bulk station, I'm gonna go ahead and go back here on this too. So, on number D, the underground storage tank shall be located no closer to any property line than the greatest depth to the bottom of such tanks. I was looking for that language in our old. But I guess my question that I added here is, how deep are those tanks? And, do they meet our standard setbacks? So I don't know how deep is an underground storage tank? Are they 12 feet deep, 15 feet deep in the bottom of it? So I'm trying to, I don't know if this language is appropriate, or if it means anything, or, you know what I mean? What could it affect?
What's the DNR regulations now on underground storage?
I don't know. This underground language is from your M2 district. I can't tell you how it compares to DNR. But we could check into that.
I think we do, because I think we really should look to see what the state has out there. I don't know what the laws are, because most of this is going to be regulated already by the DNR. Isn't the DNR who does the underground permitting for hazardous material?
They do. Yep.
So I guess I get it that this has been in for a long time, but we also need to look at what current regs are.
Sure.
That the DNR is, yeah,
Might not be accurate at all.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it. Why are they putting it in here?
It is our old language.
yeah, it is our own language, so
Right.
that we need to be looking at it now and determine whether or not, all right, is this valid? Does the state have something else out there? Is it completely out of date?
Sure, we can do that.
Thanks, Laura.
If DNR does have something different than this, is there any reason we couldn't make it slightly more restrictive than the DNR regulations, or do you have to stick with that?
I don't think we can make it any more restrictive. Because we can't be more
Well,
restrictive.
you can't make it less restrictive.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't think we could make it more restrictive.
No, you can't make something less restrictive than the state. You can make it more restrictive.
Oh.
I thought it's the
Am I
other way
right?
around. I think it's the other way.
Unless the state overrides you, like on feedlots, then counties can't do something more restrictive, for an example.
Yeah, I don't think we can do
So
more.
our best bet may be to simply refer to the Iowa DNR standards and then this language remains adaptable to whatever those regulations are at the state level.
That sounds good.
The other thing is, then we know who's enforcing it, and it's not the zoning administrator, it's the Iowa DNR. That might be a good solution to some of these, is to just reference compliance with those state requirements and then keep it simpler,
I agree.
not try and figure it out.
Well,
Lead ahead to
why
law
reinvent
change.
the wheel? Why reinvent the wheel if, the state's already doing some of that? And, if it makes sense.
Well, there's been a lot of, since the 1970s, there's been a lot of underground gas storage that has been taken care of and removed, and this language was done before that. And so we need to look at what quote modern day regulations are out there.
Okay, that's a great idea. All right. Okay, Lori, what else you got for us?
Now we get to the cell towers on page 6 is where my notes start. Oops.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so, there's page 5, page 6. Under D, where it's talking about the ADLS, the aircraft detection lighting system, may be provided unless prohibited by FAA regulations. We need to change that word to shall. Do you guys agree with that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because
what
that's
we have
gonna,
in the term.
that's gonna match that and it makes sense. And yeah, for new, and this would be for new towers, you guys. I don't think we want to, I don't even know if we'd be able to,
Yeah, we can't go retroactive. now.
right, well, some of them replace equipment periodically. I get phone calls about, do we need a permit? We're just replacing antenna, replacing coax. And for, our standard answer to that is, as long as they're not changing the height, increasing the footprint or changing the height, we don't require, any permits. But, unless we'd wanna make them add I don't know if we can even, Laura, can we make them add aircraft protection lighting if they're upgrading their lighting system?
Not if they're prohibited by the Federal Aviation Administration. You can't usurp the federal regs.
I know, but our thing is, we want, because we're adding, we want them to have the ADLS.
Yeah, I think you can do that. And then you've got your provision in there. If the FAA says no, then okay. The FAA said no. And yeah, what you said, you want it to change, may, shall, goes to shall, and that sentence got it.
needs to go to shall. I believe that's your call, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just found it and was like,
Yeah,
It makes sense.
Okay,
then can we, how would we add language to say, not, get it to worded to where it's not just for new construction, but for any, upgrading. Also to include upgrades.
we would almost have to do like any major upgrades, because I mean, a small upgrade, what are we gonna look at?
Well, there,
You're getting subjective again, aren't you?
well, I mean,
Mhm.
it's a cell tower. You know what they upgrade? They upgrade the antennas, the coax, and they probably upgrade lighting. There's not a whole lot to
Right,
those towers.
So if they are gonna
So-
upgrade.
I think what we want to do is go to Iowa Code and see what they say. Before we try to figure that out for ourselves, because they have language in that Iowa Cell Siting Act, and I think that's where we should look before we try to come up with it today.
Okay,
That question can be answered by that code, I think.
got it.
Okay.
All right. Um. All right, and the next one, Laura, comes back to some of my other questions about nonconformities. But actually, this is probably just something you need to talk to me about. You guys, I have trouble wrapping my head around nonconformities, legal nonconformities, versus, illegal, on something. So this is probably just more of a tutelage for me, because I was looking at number 14 is where, down here, Laura.
And what was I'm sorry, I missed the question in there, Lori.
There wasn't one, other than I had trouble wrapping my head around some of that, so I think we just need to set your zoning administrator straight on those non-conforming uses.
Oh, boy. Yeah, those are fun. Those are fun.
I know they are, that's why I need help wrapping my head around some of them. The next one, number 15, I made a note on the multi-family dwelling, including the residential condominiums, provided that, and it says here, such units abut a hard surface road. I really would recommend us changing that to such units are accessed by hard surface road.
Put in terms of access instead of a but. Okay.
Yeah, accessed by hard surface road, and I can give you guys a real life example of this without mentioning names. But there is one along a gravel road, out in my side of the county. The back of the property abuts a hard surface road. The access is probably about a half mile of gravel. And they converted a 2-story farmhouse into a 5-family dwelling unit.
do we really care whether they're on a gravel or paved road?
Well,
Yeah.
Seriously,
I think the major issue with any kind of multifamily dwelling, any kind of increase in density that I can determine from your code is that you're really worried about being able to provide them with services from emergency medical staff, fire department, sheriff. If they're, so the idea is there could be a lot of people in danger in this unit and we can't get there. So I think that's what's leading to some of these conditions and also why it's a special exception. Because the idea, it's back to like that assisted living where there's a lot of people in a structure. The county land use policy is really like, let's see those in the cities. That's our preference. If they're going to happen in the county, that's why I think there's some of these conditions being part of the language currently.
And this is part of our, this does mirror our old language.
I
I've,
know,
I've
but
worked with one like this.
I get it, but if somebody wants to convert their property, which we've got one that is converted into a 2 apartment, no, it's not on gravel, it's on the old Highway 61, so it's still kind of sort of paved.
And that's fine. We're already working to make that something that's easily done. It's when it gets into the multifamily dwelling that I think the concerns start, because you've got multiple families.
Okay, but
Which
it's okay
means
for a farm
more
fam-
people.
So it's okay for a farm family to be out in the middle of nowhere and have further access than it is for a dwelling with 4 families in it.
5 in this one.
Okay, 5 in this one.
Well, it could be, in the case of this, you could have as many as 8 as opposed to 1. And the farms, remember, those dwellings are exempt from zoning, so that's
No,
sort of.
and I
And
know
so
that.
the
but I mean,
answer is, yes, because they're exempt. But these aren't. These are special exceptions, higher density in areas that you're really wanting to be maintained as much as possible for ag. And I think the whole emergency response is driving some of this concern when you get to multifamily dwellings. Does that help?
not really, because it puts more restrictions on a property owner.
Well, this is a property in A1, and my understanding from your land use policy is if you want to do a multifamily dwelling, put it in a R1, put it in a residential district or a commercial district, not an A1 district. So if you would rather see us promote this, we can move this language and make sure there's a district that I think they're allowed in the commercial district. I think the thing to remember, well, this is my perception, and you guys can tell me I'm off base. My understanding of your policy is there's a reason most of your counties zoned A1 agricultural, because most of your county is used for agricultural purposes.
Right, but we
And-
allow 2-acre parcels.
Okay, but well, let me finish. That the distinction is if we're going to have people living there on the farms, we're not going to regulate them. If we're going to have people living there in single family homes, they've got to be in at least 2 acres. The things that are in this special exception are things that the preference would be is a garden center, a multifamily home, or a multifamily dwelling. Those kinds of uses would be in a zone designed for them in places where those zones are, as opposed to A1. So that's why there's conditions. And that's why there's a special exception. That's my read of this. I could be wrong. That's how I understand.
So if you have rural area and an ag area, farmhouse you turned into a family home or multifamily home, 5 families, why is that still taxed the same way as a farmhouse? Because
It's actually valued differently.
it's valued.
If you look at the Iowa Department of Revenue's appraisal manual,
Mhm.
I've seen it before.
Time or two.
It does break down for multifamily dwellings. They call them 2, 3, 4, 5 family conversions. And so what it does is it takes into consideration the extra plumbing that you're gonna have for each kitchen sink. It takes in the extra HVAC. It takes in I'm gonna have another word I can't say, you guys, the extra frustration. Not frustration, the extra doors and windows, the ingress.
Fenestration.
Fenestration, thank you. So it takes in that consideration. Now, there's $2 words. But yeah, so it takes into that. So yes, the Iowa Department of Revenue does take into consideration when they're valuing
Okay.
those type of properties. And higher value creates higher taxes. So, not that I'm answering any questions for the assessor's office, but I know how that one works.
My ring.
Yeah, it's complicated. There's zoning, there's taxing, classifications. There's conversions of what looks like residential and commercial properties and agricultural zoning. Yeah, I hear where you're coming from. I'm just trying to relay the way I'm seeing it. If I'm off base, be back on base, I guess. So that's just how I'm reading this ordinance from my perspective. So we can certainly do things to make it however you want it, multiple family dwellings to be a more readily available option. We could do that. That's the time to do it.
I don't think we want to do anything that's going to conflict against the comprehensive plan. Whatever the comprehensive plan says, I mean, we got to kind of follow that.
I don't like the, must access by a paved road because I guess I just don't like that. I mean, let's face it, there's not that many paved roads
On A1.
in A1. And
Well-
if you agree with the big old farmhouse that wants to convert it,
I guess this is a good question to ask Lori of our EMT fire department and sheriff department. If they have any concerns, maybe they were the ones that kind of suggested this language way back when. Maybe it makes a difference to them now, maybe it doesn't.
They aren't, I can tell you where this came from. This came from questions that was raised by my board of adjustment when they heard this case.
Oh, okay.
So
But
this
this
is,
is existing language.
yeah, the existing language, it's just that the only, suggestion that was made was being accessed by her surface road, but it doesn't need to be. But a butt would normally mean it touches or that you're getting there from that hard surface road.
Yeah,
when, and then two, like where this one is, there's not a lot of houses on this road. There's two on, a stretch of gravel that's probably total at least a mile, but it's not a high priority gravel road for maintenance or snow removal. It does meet, it is within 5 miles of a normal travel route to a fire station though, but it's
Okay.
not.
I look at my house that's on a dead end road and guess where the water access is? On the other side of that level C road.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
So you have to travel 8 miles to get to the water source if we were to have a fire.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is totally up to you guys. I mean,
Mhm.
want to make
Yeah.
that change. It's just, I actually read this, you guys, and went through and made marks just so that we could discuss things that maybe I've seen questioned or challenged by others, but by all means, it can stay exactly the way it is.
Mhm.
Or you can strike the language altogether, Monica.
Mike,
I
what
would like
would you
to, but
say as a
probably
fire
not.
person?
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
Doesn't make any difference whether you're on a gravel road or the fire department's used to going down gravel roads. Doesn't make any difference. I mean,
And if the snow ain't plowed, they'll get the snow plowed.
The guy coming to the person's shot from Otter Creek. But yeah, so it can stay, what do you guys want, just leave it as it was originally?
I don't see a problem leaving it, but I mean, I understand the accessible part.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I really don't understand why, if it abuts it, why you wouldn't put a driveway in to be accessible to the.
Cause you
road,
might
but-
not be able to, cause if it's a state highway, they may not allow.
Well,
Driveway
yeah,
in.
I guess that's.
Or you might not be able to, because it's a rocky outcrop and
There could be a curve, there
There's-
could be
there's a
visibility.
Crick and there is a crick
Yeah.
with this one.
Being pretty sticky about their restriction.
Very, yeah,
So this one, did you say the total back of the property is on the paved road? But the actual driveway to the house is a mile
About a half mile
on
from,
gravel?
yeah. Yeah, so, but at the same time, we don't have to make any language changes to that, or you can strike the whole number A. That's some of the choices, you know, you guys would have to do, since I accidentally opened a can of worms here.
Well, in this case, he met the requirement, but he did not meet what it was intended to be.
Correct.
So I mean, it's a loophole, but he met the requirement because the property does. So if you were to change it, would you say the driveway to the dwelling has to have access?
My wording was, such units are accessed or shall be accessed by hard service road
Shall have access to.
from, to or from hard service road.
Access over service road.
So, but, you know, it's, you know, but at the same time, probably a good thing we did have that loophole for the fact he happened to have the project done before we ever got the Board of Adjustment. So, but just examples, real world examples that I can throw out there. But. So, I mean, we're spending a lot of time on one little
Yeah.
thing, so what do you guys wanna do? Do you wanna leave it as is? Do you wanna strike A altogether? Or do you wanna make other language changes to it?
I move that we strike it.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to strike the word, the whole letter A, correct? Is that what you're saying? Any more
Are
discussion?
there any more items?
Discussions?
Are there any 15B?
Yep.
What are,
Oh, I wouldn't touch B. I mean, excuse
so
me.
there's more.
But I mean,
Can
will
we
it-
see what the others are?
Deleting A, will it affect the
Will
other
it
part?
affect the B
it will
or
not.
anybody else?
All right.
Okay.
It will not. The other one's the fire protection. No more than 5 miles by normal travel routes from the nearest fire station. And also, just so you know, with that left in, it leaves us able to use that language elsewhere where we may find it important to use.
By leaving it in, by leaving it in.
Yes, by leaving it in. It allows us, it allows us. It shows a precedence that we have used this language and still use that language for this. And we can use it in other parts of the ordinance.
If we don't strike it though, wouldn't that,
The A or the B,
the A?
the A, that's up to you guys.
Well, I
That has
just- I
nothing to
think
do
it
with,
was the second.
that has nothing to do with B.
So right now, the motion and second was to strike letter A under number 15, multifamily dwelling.
Correct.
Okay, got it. And we had a second.
We're okay, yes, we do, Laura.
Okay,
So what
And
you're
you're
saying,
saying if we take out A, that could be a problem with something else?
No, sir. We were talking about B.
oh,
I didn't realize
okay,
we got-
okay.
Oh.
I was
Yeah, 'cause
confused
someone
with
else-
that too, Mike, yeah.
Sorry,
I thought-
but no, A will not.
Let's
A
vote.
is,
Okay.
A is fine.
Any more discussion on this? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motions, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes.
okay.
Now I'm afraid to bring up any more suggestions, you guys, that I see.
Good.
So am I.
Like, leave now. Sorry.
Okay, so we're still in A1. I'm gonna go ahead and go to page 8, you guys.
It's not over.
Laura, did you want to talk about what's highlighted in yellow? The seasonal resorts and farm exempt uses?
Well, these are, I think these might be ones, Lori, that you and I could talk about
Oh, sure.
for more administrative.
Okay.
What's it all look like? I think the commission's time
All right.
doesn't need to be on that.
All right,
And-
so then if we go to page 9, this is, sorry, guys, it's kind of hiding the top, but it's for the signs.
And we're still working on this, Laura. They had a question last month and I still don't think we have quite everything worked out yet on that, so. That's why it says under review at the bottom of page 8. So the language didn't change, folks, because we're still looking into it. There were some questions about along highways and stuff like that. For the directional signs, we're researching.
All right, so, all right.
We're at the end of that. Okay, any other questions on A1? Okay, so, I'd like to go ahead and use this letter as kind of again, starting off here. So one of the things that we talked about it at the beginning of this process was trying to come up with alternative regulations for residential areas that were created before there was zoning. And so we had talked about doing a whole separate district. And then Lori, Becca, and I said, how about if we try this first? How about if we use the same one district, the R1 residential district, because we're dealing primarily with single family at this point, and let's see if we can come up with alternative regulations within that district. That way nobody has to get rezoned, and we have regulations that give us some flexibility. So that's what we did. The things that we looked at were two things. One, we had done research a couple years ago on Leisure Lake in that area. And then Lori and Becca took a look at cases that came before the Board of Adjustment dealing with setbacks and what were they for, what part of that the residential regulations were what were the characteristics. So we use that kind of research. So Laura, if we go to the second page of this letter. So most of the information that we gathered during that study of the Leisure Lake Property Owners Association study. And so what we were looking at there is that's a very particular area. It's got a property owners association. Not all of these areas do, although some do. It's also really a mix of residential and recreational uses focused around the lake and allowing for accessory structures and campers and trailers and things. And so we really trying to work on ways to accommodate the way that subdivision, that community was set up. One of the things we did is the first chart, smaller one, was, well, what happens when we apply our current regulations that we use for the R1 district to these folks in Leisure Lakes? And so there are the three types. They have a well and septic, or they're on a community water and sewer, or they're just seasonal. And these requirements were then just basically looking at the size of the lot, how many of those properties could comply. Well, you can see if they have to have a well and septic and 20,000 square feet, 2/3 of them almost don't. So if we have community well and sewer, and they do have it, I think, in Leisure Lake, and 12,000 square foot, a little more than a third are not able to meet it. So based on that, we also then, if you look at the next chart, I'm sorry, did someone have a question?
Yeah, so these are what do not qualify, correct? So 65.2% do not qualify with the 20,000 square foot. And, okay, so it's a number of parcels. Okay, I understand this now. Sorry, I was reading it.
That's okay. That's okay. So yeah, this says how many aren't up to that minimum, and so 2/3 aren't. So then the chart with the colors is something else that was in that report. And so we're looking at comparing also the other part of development regulations, not just the size of the lot, which is a big deal, but also things that we were talking about earlier about setbacks. And so what we have done is we've kind of looked at how these play out in Leisure Lake area, and then the analysis that the staff did from the Board of Adjustment. And so that's going to play out in the district that we're going to regulation revisions that we're suggesting. So Lori, if you want to, we can move into that red line version. I know it's going to be it's hard to read. I don't know if it's even, well, I don't know if we want to jump to the clean one or not.
That's up to you.
Let's go to page 2, page 2. So here's an example where we had that standard form of a table that shows the principal uses, their parking and regulations. And then you see we drop down here right in the middle of the page, trying to come up with alternative uses for properties that were platted before the zoning ordinance came into effect. And we do the same thing when you go through the accessory uses. If you go to the next page, Lori. The accessory uses, again, we have a subset for those for the zoning. And then, let's see, the special exceptions are coming up, and those actually, we didn't really make a lot of changes in those. So you can go through that, show them that page, Lori, be page 4.
Yeah, because it starts here, the special exception uses and structures.
Yep.
Is bottom of page 3.
Yep, and then goes on to page 4. And then 5. And then we start again. Here's our development regulation. So we separated these into 2 tables. So this first table this is for those properties that were platted after we had zoning. And so we have a set of regulations that apply. And then if you go to the next page, Lori, page 6. Now we created a second table. This is for alternative regulations for those lots that existed before there was a zoning ordinance. And so some of the same characteristics and requirements are in there, but we also have some other options. Same with accessory. If you want to move to page 7. And also for special exceptions. We also are trying to be pretty flexible in this district. There were already options for flexibility. There's an idea of an average front yard setback or average front setback. There's a special side setback in certain cases. And then Lori and I worked on trying to come up with a setback for off-street parking that would also provide some flexibility. The idea with this one is you need at least a 20-foot setback to park a vehicle, but a lot of the properties are only 10 feet from the property line. So if we want to go to page 8, Lori, we can look at some drawings that try to explain that. So for the average setback, that's that first diagram. Basically, you're looking at what's in the area, and just making a comparison of what would normally be required, what's existing, and then what's the average of that. So not very sophisticated math, but it gives flexibility and avoids going to the board for a special exception. Diagram below, this is the one trying to deal with the fact that we really need 20 feet for a vehicle, but you could have your home or your garage 10 foot away if you had some options. So one is a side facing garage or side loading. Another is where the garage is in front, it's still side loading, but there's still enough space in kind of a forecourt kind of a space where you can pull in and have 20 foot. And if we go to, yep.
Can I interrupt just a second?
Yep.
Can you show me in the development regs, diagram where we're asking for that 20-foot driveway?
It's from the right of way.
Where's it at in my diagram? Because I was looking through here. You know, where I know you're telling
So
us.
number four, under notes, page 7.
Okay, the fine print. Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
And we know it can be tricky because sometimes the property line is the back of the curb or back of the sidewalk, and sometimes it's not, it's somewhere else. And then we're dealing with a right-of-way line. So I think, Lori, you and I discussed using right-of-way.
Yes, because in most of the areas that we're talking, there is no curb, there is no sidewalk.
Right.
It is always gonna be behind the right of way or, yeah. Yeah,
So, okay, so if we go to the next page.
just a
I'm
second,
sorry.
Monica's
I have
trying
a
to.
question.
Monica,
Yeah, I got a question. So in Leisure Lake, the roads, I can't remember how it's plotted.
I'm trying to think too.
Do the roads
Oh.
actually, I mean, they're private roads. Are there actually right-of-way markers? Or has it been surveyed? That's kind of scary.
if I remember correctly,
What's there for does, I mean, is the right-of-way clearly marked? I'm trying to think, I mean, it's been a while since I've been down that way. And so we're trying to do this from the right-of-way. How do we identify that in an area like Leisure Lake?
whenever there's questions, if they don't know where the pins are, they need to know either by locating, you know,
Right.
one that's a property away, doing the straight line, finding theirs, or getting it repinned.
Do
are we-
they know, have these plots all been surveyed at one time?
These,
Have they been?
Leisure Lake was surveyed out over probably a, 10-15 year period, I'm not sure, 60s and 70s.
So it is, but they have been surveyed.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, they're all surveyed lots, they're all
Okay.
legally, they all have their own legal
Okay,
description.
that's what
And, yeah, we have Schwinkers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have unit 1, unit 2, unit
Okay,
3,
all right.
and they all have
I
lots in blocks.
I couldn't remember on that, and that's what okay.
Yeah, and you know, one of the other caveats of Leisure Lake, well, the lots are small. There's a lot of,
One of the other.
one of them, the lots are, on top of lots being small, the lots that back the lake. Here's the road, here's the house.
Right,
And, one of the cases we have next week is a front yard setback for a garage. And so that's one, and we did look at when Laura, I don't remember the number, I want to think about, well over 50% of all of our cases were on small lots. And then Leisure Lake, of course, leads up, you know, the count for the small lot Board of Adjustment cases. But, and then too, the Board of Adjustment would take into consideration, okay, here's a garage, where are you gonna park? So they were trying to make sure there is someplace to park where that vehicle is not in the right of way when they park.
Okay.
So, and, I like the work that Laura put in to show examples of, especially on page 8. That's a real good example.
You
and
wanna
the
bring, can we go to page 8? So they can see what you're talking. There you go.
Mine's, I'm in my, here, this is actually.
Oh, that's the one?
in
Okay,
my
yeah.
cleaning, because I didn't print off the red. Sorry.
Yeah, so I saw this and I said, oh, this looks like Leisure Lake.
Yeah, this is a
Um, yeah.
good representation of how, you know, some of the ways they might be able to get that 20-foot driveway. You know, they might only have a 10-foot front yard setback, but if they can do a side entry, garage in another route, it works. And two, another thing here on your actual page 8 on the red line, where, Laura's showing the average front setbacks. That's a really good example. And we have a lot of that, where that's gonna come useful out in Dresslers.
So these are some of the ways we're trying to accommodate the existing development that was created before the ordinance. The rest of it is just the signs. Oh, and there's some special requirements too. So kind of the meat and potatoes of this one, if you will, is, are you comfortable with us leaving everything in one district and providing flexible regulations for those alternative small lot subdivisions and communities? Are you okay with us leaving it all in one district as opposed to creating a whole new one? Does silence mean yes? If so, we're good.
I know there's work to be done on signs.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
But-
we can do that. If you
But
want.
number 7, directional signs may be placed in the required front yards. Other permitted signs shall be located at least 20 feet from a lot line or not more than 5 feet from the main building. We're not limiting them from being on the building, correct?
No,
I just wanted to confirm that.
I don't.
think so, because it didn't spell it out. Okay.
Wouldn't that be something in the homeowners association that they've got there?
Well, but this also covers not just Leisure Lake. This is all R1.
Okay.
And
So-
then. someone gets-
Okay. So you want to make sure it's clear that, yeah, that they can also have wall mounted signs.
Yeah, that's, you know, because like the lady that has her little daycare, you know, at the basement level, or the other lady that does hair.
Uh-huh.
You know, a little sign pointing to go down to the back of the house, to the beauty shop, because that's where people go in. Just, yeah,
Gotcha.
thank you. And
Yeah.
that carry on into the other districts too, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. If that's okay with the commission. Okay, sorry, I'm just finding holes and trying to plug them.
Yeah, that's good. We want to make sure that we're very clear so people understand their options and we understand what it is. We're
Well, and that's been a challenge.
It is always a challenge. Okay,
Can we talk about? Can you go into detail on number 2 for us, please, Laura? Down here, more than one principal structure on the line. This is R1.
yeah, whose idea was this? Was this mine? Must be, it's red. This is the one I struggle with, Lori, like you do with non-conforming.
Does this come back?
Does this have something to do with Leisure Lake? Because it's before zoning ordinance. What were we trying to address here?
I don't know. Was it some attempt to do the AUDs?
No, I don't
Okay.
think so.
All right.
I bet this is something we were trying to do for leisure. I'm gonna have to go back and reread that report. Sorry about
I
that,
don't
folks.
know. I'm trying to think an example for Leisure Lake, and
Yeah. I don't know why that one's there, which suggests maybe it shouldn't be, but I better double check. There might have been something.
I'll put a big question mark and
Yeah,
okay.
for some reason I'm thinking Leisure Lake, but I can't recall why. Okay,
And I can't think of it an example.
either. But there might be something in that report. Okay. Did we want to take a look at the clean version? See if there's anything that stands out for
I have
Commissioner?
some questions for you after I looked at that.
Okay.
Okay, when we get to the district standards and, okay, accessory dwelling units does this side setback, is that from Iowa code? Because our other setbacks on some of those lots are gonna be, they're 10-foot side setbacks. So when I saw this 20-foot setback here, I was thinking it should reflect 10. And then down here with this one also, I was thinking that should also reflect 10 for the fact it's still, R1. Is there something I'm missing?
No, I'm not sure why it's 25. Unless I have to go back, I'll have to go back and check. That might have been in the special exception conditions. I'll have to check.
Okay, because it's this one that's 20 and this one that's 20. And then
Yeah. So railroad yards are required to have a 25-foot setback under the special exception. What was the second one that you said?
the accessory uses and structures. I think, I'm not convinced that the 20 is supposed to be there. My mind went straight to 10, unless there's something I'm missing. And then the same with this one down here.
No, that makes sense. I'm not sure even why the street side yard isn't the same as. Boy, I don't know where that one came up. I'll have to look at that one. Okay. Let's see, that's page 5.
Didn't we drop, because we dropped the side yards down to 25.
Mm-hmm.
And the old one was 30, you guys, and we've seen so many corner setbacks come to us with the Board of Adjustment that aren't reasonable, and the ones I can really think of are in Leisure Lake. That just, I know, and it doesn't fit the rest of R1 zoning, and it's kind of disappointing that even going back as far as 1976, they didn't recognize that Leisure Lake is different, Dressler's is different, Kurth is different, and Cheney Daggett's lots are different.
So-
They-
But Lori, this is for lots that were created after the zoning district. So table 1, I agree, the numbers for the accessory and special exception need to fall in
Oh,
line
sure.
with the principle.
Okay,
But table 2 on page 6 is where we're going with
Okay,
those
you're right.
regulations. If you want to visit with the commission about that, I'll make the changes. I'll work with you on table 1. Yeah,
Okay.
that's like a bunch of, I don't know where I get those numbers, to be honest.
we'll go back and look at them
Yeah,
and represent them to the commission next time.
so when we get to, if we're looking at table, are we gonna can we look at table, are we on table 2?
Table 1.
Okay,
There's-
table 2. So, this is trying to do what Lori was saying, try to acknowledge what's going on with the way places like Dressler's and Leisure Lake are developed. One of the things I wanted to draw your attention to is in the middle, under the allowed accessory uses and structures, we tackle the idea of the attached or detached private garage that we talked about earlier, where there can be this balancing act between side facing or whatever it might be, so that the setback is 20 feet, but it could be 10 feet if you have a 20-foot driveway. And so that's what this section where the distances are in italics, that's what those are trying to call attention to. And when you go down to the top of page 7, Lori, there are those notes for the same thing applies whether it's a new subdivision or older. We have these options. But I'm also trying to link things into the table too, because I think just the more ways we can kind of help people look for things in more than one place and make sure they're confirming it, it just really, me, it helps as an administrator. So that's kind of how this cleaned up version looks. I really like the idea. I'm hopeful your commissioners are supportive of this. The idea that creating the regulations in the existing district means no one has to have their property rezoned. Nothing changes for them except, oh, hey, the regulations are more flexible. My experience in 30 years is not many people want to have their property rezoned when they didn't initiate it. So this avoids that angst for folks. Okay, I'm off my platform now. All right. And we'll look at those signs and the other issues there. Are we ready to move on to the next one? The C1? So in this one, basically what we try to do, same template, but we also try to introduce opportunity for more types of commercial uses. And so as we move through the red line version, if you want to start there, Lori, we're starting to do that. We're starting to use the simplified parking requirements. We get to page 2, you can see we've introduced some more uses. Page 3, this continues. The idea being that if we're going to provide an opportunity for these uses, but we're going to provide it in a commercial zone, it's got the purpose and intent of it is quite different from residential or agricultural. So we felt comfortable recommending options for more uses, which all still, they tend to be pretty similar in terms of their parking demands. If you want to go to page 5, we have accessory uses in this district that there are these are kind of reworded just a little bit. Talk about the upper story dwellings, but we're basically keeping the same language, just kind of rewording them a little bit. And actually, they don't even have to be upper story. That word could go.
Yeah, because some of them are, just built within the.
Yeah, I thought about that today. I thought, man, you never have to get.
And actually, C1 district, hang on, I have notes, but mind you, I'm using the clean. Yeah, and I had, on the upper story, I also had, a note about, attached dwelling unit also.
Okay.
Whoops.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're in the special exceptions. We've talked about the cell tower regulations already. So we kind of covered that in A1. We're going to make the regulations consistent at this point. That's the intent. We could go to page 8. And so here we've introduced some regulations for dwellings. We'll strike that word upper story, make it attached or whatever the case might be. That's appropriate. But again, this is now opening this district up to office and commercial uses, as well as mixed residential, office, commercial, and providing development regulations, setback, that sort of thing for them. Signs really didn't have a lot of changes there, I don't think. Do we want to move to the clean version, Lori, to go through your questions?
I covered mine already.
You did? Okay. Commissioners have any questions? Okay. Why don't we move on then to the M1? So the M1 is your limited industrial district. And we can start, I think, with the red line. The biggest difference between this and M2 is it tends to make sure everything is inside a building or screened. And it's also a little bit of everything, a little warehousing, wholesale, storage. So what we've done is, again, just kind of try to use those general uses, update the parking a bit. If you want to go to page 2. this is a good example of just really consolidating that list of uses into that general category of vehicle sales, service, repair, agricultural sales, service and supply, building materials, lumber yard. Go to the next page. One of the things that Lori's been looking at is logging. You recall we had logging suggested as a A1 use for storage only because there's already logging there in places, but it's tends to be only storage. And our thought was it could be something that would be allowable in one. This does not include a sawmill or any kind of operations, just the storage of the logs.
And actually, now that you touched on that, for the log storage in A1, were we leaning towards only logs stored on the property where it was logged? Instead of moving it to other property that's within?
No, that's not how I recall our conversation ending.
Okay. Cause, storing it where it was logged until, they're gonna use it, to me is one thing, but hauling it to a site, cause I can think of,
Well, the ones we looked at were places where that was happening though. This exact same thing, that's what was happening. The ones you showed me in A1, they had a whole bunch of logs
mhm.
and different areas of. Yeah, that was how I understood the conversation, because that's what's already there.
I guess it don't really matter, it is A1, and it's not, hang on here. Can that be principal use, right?
It is a principal use
Okay, good, okay, all right, never mind.
in A1. But as Lori said, we don't want the production end of this. Storing logs, that can be handled. There's no noise of equipment and that sort of thing, maybe for trucking coming in and moving things around. But that's intermittent. So we thought this was a good option for M1 also. And then if you want to, when you're ready, Laura, if you want to move on to the red line for accessory uses. Kind of made this one that consistent with other districts. Special exceptions. Again, we've got the cell tower, which we've already talked about, wind energy, which you have already dealt with. So temporary uses are pretty similar. We've already talked about those in ag. They're pretty much the same. I'm on, what page are you on? 6. On page 7 is the temporary uses. And then we start to get into the development regulations for M1. And that goes on to page 8. Again, very similar to the C1. We've got the principal uses, the accessory uses, special exceptions, and then anything dealing with the dwelling. How to try to take care of all those. And then the sign regulations, I think I didn't have it. I don't think we had any changes in those at this point, but maybe you have some.
I don't have any.
Okay. And then in section, the next section, the special requirements. I just suggested headings for these 3 areas just to kind of, to me, it makes it a little easier for people to focus in on what it is we're trying to say. So really not a lot of change there, just headings. So if we're okay with M1, we can move into the clean version of it. Laura, you have anything for us here?
They don't.
Okay.
I've got one question on the special requirements for the issue of the permits. On page 10 on 1, do we want that for the facilities, including sewage lagoons were needed or adequate for the proposed development? Shouldn't that be our sanitary administrator, that they have to be provided that instead of the zoning administrator?
Yeah, we could change that to the, in fact, it's not really necessary because of letter B. You can shorten that up. Yeah, good point.
And truthfully, if they're talking, water treatment plans,
That's gonna be DNR and not,
for the lagoons and
Yeah.
such facilities,
Yeah.
that's still in state.
Okay. Great,
Good.
thank you. Okay, do we want to just move through the clean version of this then and head into M2?
I think I heard Mary go, mm-hmm. No, wasn't Mary, how was Christie?
So M2 is your general industrial district. A lot of times you will hear the term heavy industrial. So these are uses that are, when you think of pretty substantial industrial uses, that's what this M2 district is for. So Lori, if you want to start off with us in the red line. So the very first hint of this is, it's right there in that intent. These are heavy manufacturing uses. You want to make sure we're mitigating any impacts they have to the surrounding uses, present and future. And so when you look at this list of uses, some of them can have some pretty, they make a lot of noise, they might have dust and so forth. So that's what this district is intended to deal with. And if you want to go to the next page, Lori. So given that, this is where we're recommending that when you have the logging operation that has the production end of it, as well as the storage, really M2 is where we feel it should be. And I think luckily that's where it happens to be currently. And so this is a short table, but it's because it's the list, the uses are in broad categories. If we're okay with that, we can move to accessory uses. Pretty similar here to M2. And then we move into special exceptions. So when we move into this on page 4, here is where there is a laundry list of the types of manufacturing and processing operations that, even if you're in M2, we want the Board of Adjustment to be able to have a hearing and get people's reaction to these at a specific location. And then they're just followed by some really other heavy duty things, solid waste facilities, junkyards, bulk storage. And so that's where these are placed. We're trying to keep the regulations for the bulk storage the same in M1 and M2. You'll see that on page 5. Cell towers again, and we've already looked at that, so we can skip that. And we've talked about mining, so we can address that. In terms of solar energy, you might have noticed we had accessory uses for solar, just as either building mounted, but everything consumer scale. Nothing in here is dealing with anything that's utility scale for solar. Temporary uses, same as M1. Development regulations come up next on page 7. Again, same format as C1 and M1, trying to deal with that range of possible uses, providing a setback, height requirements. Not really much on signs that were suggested. And then when we get into the special requirements, we can make those same changes here. The language is pretty close to the same. On page 10. And want to go to, we can keep going, Lori, into the clean version if you want. And did you have any questions for us on M2?
No, we're doing good with that. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe that is the last one. We are all done. 99 pages of fascinating. Regulations. Okay, wonderful job. Lots of good discussion. Thank you all so much for doing this.
Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura. And we'll be.
Good evening. Yes, ma'am, we will. Thank you.
I had
Bye.
head back and put you on the calendar.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, so.
Yeah.
Let's get to the.
Sorry, we're gonna take a couple minute break here. Okay.
Okay, this is good. Thank you.
Unless you're gonna tell me that we're gonna be done in 5 minutes.
Well, probably not, but close.
Well, we're gonna be done.
Oh, within 15.
Yeah, okay, that's
I
fine.
know, I froze an hour. I
Like John.
Okay, so Mike, you're ready to get going? Okay. So the next thing on the agenda is.
Yep. The introduction of the data processing center ordinance. Correct?
Yes, so we're just gonna introduce that. We're not really gonna have any discussion. I can kind of run through a few things with you. And here's what I'm gonna do. I kind of used the wind ordinance as a template. However, there was things as I got going through it, Mike, we talked a little bit before, but I'm like, if there's things you guys want added, we'll add it back in, but I took out the things that I'm like, it's inert or doesn't really apply to the data processing facilities. So as you're going down through it, we have a purpose. And please read through this, you guys. And I don't have this online yet. And the reason I don't is because I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to look at it first. We've had almost 3 hours of public comment over the past 2 meetings. And we kind of know the direction that the public is wanting this to go. And we want to make sure that give us the opportunity to look at it first before we get beat up real bad on it. So,
Well, we don't have to put the draft out there.
right, I know that.
The demand response load, I'm not sure we can even. I see you've got in there that we
That's red.
may not
That's,
need the language, but to be perfectly honest, I don't think we can control that at all, because that's not. We're a zoning for land use.
Right.
And the demand response has nothing to do with land.
okay. And, okay. So we can, I don't know how much discussion, the way we have the agenda written. This is more of an introduction. So I don't know how far we can stray, Monica.
Yeah, I mean, that's just something that I'm recommending, because that is outside the scope of this board.
Okay, so do you guys wanna, we'll hit some of the highlights
Yeah.
and then, if you guys wanna make a list of things that we need to discuss for the next meeting, I think that's the best way, and not have the discussion now, since we really didn't have it in the agenda. other than-
Unless we come up with something like that, so
Okay.
you don't waste your time,
We can.
Oh, gotcha.
yeah, we
waste your
can-
time
yeah.
looking it up when we don't.
So you guys all agree we don't want that in there?
We can discuss, we cannot take any action on this.
I'm gonna leave it for right now. We'll discuss it. If that's what you're
But
telling me.
don't waste your time looking it up.
Yeah,
Got it. Got it. So, there was a few things I took out of just removed completely out of the wind ordinance, because I didn't think, and I'm just gonna go through those. I took out the EMI, the electromagnetic interference. I took out, FAA, because we're not building anything that's tall.
Right.
Took out meteorological towers, non-commercial WEX, took out public lands, rotor diameter, sensitive areas, shadow flicker, total height of a WEX, a tower, took out transmission line. There's one other thing I want to make sure I took out. And I removed view shed. And and then as we got going on, we also took out the words like wind turbine, visual resources, because we're not looking at the same type of thing. We're looking at something that looks like a normal building. We're not looking at something that's 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 feet in the air. So those were probably not pertinent to that. When it comes to section 3, the siting, I was speaking with another zoning administrator last week. And, there's a thing called an overlay district. So if your base district for that area, I'm gonna use an example as A1. And you do an overlay of an M1 or an M2. So that district takes on the M2, but my understanding is it's for this use and this use only. And when that use ceases, that zoning class, that zoning district resorts back to this A1.
So we had a very similar request, it's been quite a while ago. In fact, we were over in that room over there and Tom and I disagreed.
No,
because-
no. It ain't so.
Because I think if you're changing, my opinion is that if you're gonna change the zoning from A1 to M2 for a particular business, we don't restrict it to just that business. So that business ceases and somebody else comes in.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
Remember this?
Yeah,
And we reverted it back to A1, so it's only for that business. My concern with that is who is going to remember to maintain and watch that? So a business comes in, it's M2, it stays there for 60 years, you're gone. Who's gonna know, we're all gone. Who's gonna know that this is supposed to revert back?
Okay,
So that's my concern with doing an overlay,
okay,
because that has been brought in the past.
there's,
And Tom and I disagree on this.
okay, had you guys talked with the previous administrator about an overlay district?
we didn't speak about that specifically,
Okay.
no.
No.
So
Okay.
we don't have to discuss this
Okay.
in depth right now. We don't have to
Okay.
relitigate
Because
this.
where I'm gonna go with this, this is what some of the big boy counties use, and even some of the smaller counties use for their renewable energy. So they have a renewable energy, wind turbine, solar overlay district.
Yeah.
So they're overlaying that commercial or that M1 use on top of their A1. And then when it's not used, and the thing is with these data, and this is specific to the data processing, not anywhere else in the ordinance, if you guys decide to roll with it, if I get the right language. It would be specific to that, and keep in mind, so what we're hearing about these data processing facilities, it sounds like they're limited. 5 years, 10 years. I mean, I'm hoping one of you guys is to be on the commission then, no, but you know,
I get it. I personally do not like that.
okay,
And
Okay.
and Tom's got a different opinion. He did 5 years ago or
Well,
6 or
and-
7 years
and then
ago.
keep in mind
But-
then,
But
so,
we didn't talk overlay districts specifically.
No,
okay,
we
so-
did, but it's very similar, so.
It is.
it is, I mean, I agree. However, what some of the issues is perpetuity. Is, if we know and, they're moved out, they're not there, I mean. The assessor, if we have a good dialogue with the assessor on some of this stuff, they would know because they would have notes. They don't care about zoning, however, if we talked to them and had notes and GIS had notes. When that ceased, that would keep that property from staying in M1. Because when this is done, you don't want necessarily a welding shop coming in that M1 or M2 property, if that's what it's zoned.
Why not?
Well, it's a different beast.
Well, what you'd want to do is you'd want them to apply for their own zoning. Go
Absolutely.
through their own process, so that they had to, they had to prove themselves too, not just move in and drop into a spot.
Because this would keep that A1 until that use was done. I mean, I sound like I'm trying to sell you guys on it. I'm just trying to show that there's probably some merits to it. And plus it would save having to bring it back to the Board of the zoning commission to get a rezoning back to A1. It would be smooth brushstroke. Just going back and review it without doing the neighborhood notification. And you probably wouldn't have to do it would be in the agenda, but it wouldn't, it wouldn't spell out as much as our normal public
We
hearing.
don't do
goes.
this for any other business right now, correct?
No, none.
It
And,
is a concept that I've heard of and I'm aware of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
sure, absolutely.
right, and, I had to sit down with, Clinton County last week. And we were talking, and he was talking about, renewables, and then I was talking about some other counties that do their renewables. I did reach out to Cozo Base Camp today, so county zoning, officials, to see if anybody else was using an overlay district for this type of operation. And so far, I haven't heard an affirmative, so no, I mean, it's not saying that we couldn't, it's not saying it's wrong not to. What it is saying is that this is still a new enough industry that people might not have jumped on the bandwagon and saw how it would fit this type of industry like it does the renewables.
I have a couple questions. So when you said you took out the height, just because this one came in and said it was only going to be the storage container. What if somebody else came in and said they wanted a double decker? I mean, what would our height be for a structure?
It would be whatever that zoning district is.
Okay,
So if the zoning district's 35, that's what that height structure would be. If the zoning district is 50 feet, that is what that structure would be.
Yeah.
so for agricultural, what would it be?
Agriculture is 35,
35?
industrial is 50. I mean, it takes a lot of height to get 50 feet.
Silos?
Dinosaurs, they don't build them anymore hardly. Yeah, but it
Still
takes
used.
a lot of height.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, that's ag exempt, but. I mean, a 50-foot one of these, I've never seen one.
These are, you don't know what the future's gonna bring, but I
Right.
don't see these things getting more than 2 stories.
Right,
Because they gotta work on them and they gotta pull those little computers out when they break.
and it would still fit our other zoning districts.
Yeah.
Now, I took out the height because we're not looking at 400-foot tower,
No,
for
Right, no.
400-foot
But I was
structures
just
like you would be a
asking.
wind turbine,
Right.
the way our ordinance is written. So, and we're not looking at view shed, as far as, when we're talking scenic byways or anything like that, because it looks just like a normal structure. My fear was if we kept that in, it was gonna be punitive. And we've already seen what happens when you're punitive, the state wants to take everything over. So I think if we can find a nice balance with this, maybe we'll, run the risk of, or eliminate some of the risk of the state when they come in and take over governing these two.
The other thing with computers is, I mean, think of what's happened in the last 30 years with computers. Look at how big they were. I mean, I remember 512 being a big computer, and now we're looking at terabytes and a tenth of the size.
But I don't think we're gonna get 50, whatever foot structure at all, but we're gonna get something bigger than storage containers because this is vague data set.
yeah, but if,
There's so many different kinds using that terminology. So,
well, then, and that brings the point I was gonna make up is, our language there on data processing is really kind of, at this time, there's 2 things you do in data processing. And that's, you do the Bitcoin, which is what we're talking about. And then you do the Google, the true data processing that is a 24-hour load and they don't want shut off and they're a big building. I don't see that coming to Jackson County anyway. That's what you see out in Des Moines, Chicago, the big cities. So we maybe want to, and you have it right here, the appropriate language. we might wanna tighten up the description of that.
Okay, and we're still building, and if anyone has any to share, I have some other counties that I've looked at, and then they run the gamut. And, well, for example, and that was part of what you were saying, that, demands response load.
Yeah.
That's why I had it in there as a possibility, because what you were talking about with the other AI is 24/7.
Yeah,
And it can cause an issue with the grid.
yeah.
But the other thing, when we're talking about data centers and things like that, right after 9/11. So the, what's the military base in Illinois? Well, the Savannah Army Depot. They had igloos out there, and as after 9/11, their plan was to install servers in there to be able to do data backups for places. And so, I mean, there's all sorts of data centers that are out there.
Okay, yeah,
So that is something that we need to look at.
we can add like 5 different kinds and address all of them if you think we need to.
It's probably something you have to address like pretty regularly as well, as they
So-
pop up.
Right, because we have to take those into consideration, but I'm not sure that we need to identify each type. I think
And they're all a
We do
special
a gen-
exception.
if we do a general, the collection of computer data, something kind of vague with that. But, you know, we've got to be careful, how detailed do we want to get into the business?
I think the key thing, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no, then you get loopholes if there's like.
Yeah, I think-
Very specific.
I think the key distinction that we can and should make is between interruptible load that can be shut off and the load that is required to stay on 24/7.
Isn't that where
Is that-
demand response? That was
Yeah,
that
but
language.
you were
But the
saying
thing
about,
is, but I mean, you know, that's not part of the land use, and so I don't think we can talk about or regulate whether it is a continuous load or an interruptible load.
well, no, we're not gonna make that
No.
decision here because that's,
That doesn't have to do with land use.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not-
I get that.
Okay,
I guess what I'm saying, when you say data processing. And, you know, a lot of people, people get confused between the Googles, and the Bitcoin thing. And so what I'm saying is, we need to clean that up a little bit so we're clear, that we're talking about Bitcoin interruptible load, kind of a situation.
I don't think we want to get that detailed with it. I mean, I
Do we
really
have to
don't.
settle that tonight or?
No.
no, we don't, we don't. But it was one, but go ahead, read through it,
Thank you.
read through it. If you want to send me your comments ahead of time, I'd welcome that, and I can compile them and go through them, all together. One thing I want you to think about, if you would please. We have decibel levels at a property. Remember, these aren't, they're not sitting on 40 acres of property. They're sitting on small lots because they have to be right by these substations. So I know we might have to steer ourselves away when we're thinking about this, about sound of the property line, and focus on more the dwelling and where it is. Because when they're only, 50 feet or 100 feet from a property line, they're gonna have to be buying 40 or 80 acres or whatever, but they still gotta be by that substation, which they're not gonna get away from that substation. So we might need to be focusing on the decibel level and do a setback from a property or from a dwelling, but I would maybe think twice about or how you'd want to word doing a property line setback of a structure. And maybe look at the decibel level to the nearest dwelling and a setback from the nearest dwelling.
They're
So-
gonna try to get away as cheap as possible. And there is technology to reduce sound. There's
Yes.
ways around it, if you really.
Yes.
Well, mitigation is what we talked about with windmill.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. There was one county that specifically says you have to have water cooled. Well, guess what? There's better technologies out there, but
Yeah.
they just limit themselves with water cooled. So, you know, that's where I'd say probably the focus is your setback from your dwelling, neighboring dwelling, and from your decibel level at the nearest dwelling. And, that should balance it out. But yeah, the one county that I read theirs and it's like water cooled. I'm like, really? There's a better technology, but you've already shut yourself into that corner. But just,
Can I make a recommendation on this as well? This is a draft document.
It's a draft.
And does not have to be released according to Iowa public laws. So I think if we can all look at this and come back next meeting with recommendations, and let's not make sure that this doesn't get out to the public yet, because this is really a very first draft.
Yeah,
This is not what we're
This
gonna
is-
come up with.
No,
No.
so if people, please do not release this.
it's a
We've
rough
got-
draft.
It's a very
and
rough draft.
We don't wanna let people think this is what it's gonna look like in the end,
Right.
because we know it's not. And
Yeah.
that's,
Right.
and like I said, we've heard almost 3 hours worth of concerns. And, we should be able to address, those concerns and read, like I said, read through this, rip it apart. If you need a digital copy, let me know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you send us?
Yeah, could you just email it out? please?
Okay.
So,
But, we've covered bonding, decommissioning, we have, signage, waste disposal, electrical codes and standards, setbacks, property lines, right of ways, safety. We have covered in, fire suppression. And another thing, remember I was talking about that 5 miles that from the nearest fire station by normal route, that's in here too.
okay,
So, well, right now I can't find it, but I know it's in here, and if you
I
don't
saw
find it,
it.
let me know. Because it should be there. So, but I think that 5 miles is a good standard. And go ahead and remember, we're all volunteer. We're not, we're not Clintons or Dukes where we have, paid, but the fire suppression and that 5 miles, that should provide some adequate protection. Okay, I found it. Safety, number 8, E is where our, fire suppression is, and 5 miles is in D of number 8.
Can I ask a question going back to the overlay?
Yeah.
So for example, they told us, these Bitcoin things are only going to last, like you said, maybe 5 or 10 years or whatever. Would anybody ever go in those buildings and look and see what they're doing with those at the end of the 5 or the 10 years? If they never changed the outside footprint of that building, but changed the total business inside, would we ever know that?
No, we need to know
well-
if it's considered a data mining, because
No, but if they change it to a total different business,
You would probably,
how would we know? I'm just asking.
okay,
What-
I've been in those containers. I've been in those pods. I don't know what you do with it. Turn it into a chicken house?
I don't know.
I mean,
With computers, they could,
It's
they
not
could,
much- it's not
they
There's-
could do a total.
How much
different
lighter
business.
than setting these two
well,
tables?
they could do a different business, but it would still be a
But
data
if-
related.
if, yeah, I mean, if it's
Who
not,
knows? we're not going in there.
It'd still be, but at the same time, if they had computers in there when I went in there today, and I go in there in 5 years and they got computers in there,
But are we going to go in there? I'm
No,
just asking,
but-
is that
but
what,
my-
who checks that?
nobody.
Okay,
But at the same time, they're pods. You're so limited to that.
in our minds,
But if you walk in and there's more computers, it's just another data mining
we
or
don't know.
data processing
If
center.
they don't talk to us, we don't know. And we don't have, do we have the right, we wouldn't have the right to go in there and look.
We could add, well, no, we wouldn't.
No.
You could add language.
That's what
About
I'm
any
getting at,
change
that if
of-
they ceased that actual business.
Okay, so here, let me run something by you. So, you have a business that's, and I'm just going off the wall here because I can make it work. That sells ice cream. Okay, and now they got a new person that's in there, and now they're selling ice cream and tacos. Did they change their business?
No, but I'm saying, okay, they have this. What if they turn it into selling firearms?
They can't,
There
Do
isn't, there isn't anything you can do.
yeah, well,
That's a
it,
law.
it doesn't meet the zoning, for one.
We don't know that.
I have a feeling in this county, if there is anything inappropriate, we're gonna go.
Monica,
And
we
we-
can put restrictions on that.
Well, no, that's why I'm just asking,
Yeah.
I don't know how these
Yeah.
work, and that's
And-
why I'm just asking.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, if you, Sandra, I don't have the pictures, I don't, do we have that on here at all? The old picture, last month's pictures? No.
I see what you're saying is, if they
They can
completely,
rip out every one.
but if they completely change their business, then they null and void the.
Right,
You're asking that if they change their business completely away from data mining, they null and void
Right, I
their
mean-
zoning.
There's
Right.
no more computers in there at all.
Yeah,
And, yeah,
But
and,
it's an M2. What business falls into an M2? Anything that's under the M2, they
It's
can
not.
do.
it's not empty.
that's why we raised the possibility of an overlay district.
yeah, that's,
I-
and
I-
then this
and
is,
that's,
we're
again.
gonna relitigate
we're-
this tonight, and we're not gonna go there, because you and I are gonna disagree on this. Let's.
We've been here for 2 hours and 20
I
minutes.
moved to adjourn.
Oh, we can't adjourn because we have other.
I
agenda items.
I know, that was
We're
a
not trying to
joke.
move forward.
Okay,
We're done with this.
yes, sir, we are done with this. Send me
The
your
next thing on the
notes.
agenda is items from the public. Do you have anything?
You pretty well. I was just gonna say, I want to commend you guys on doing all the information that you're gathering and stuff on this data mining thing. We're the homeowners that are gonna be affected here, so. Personally, you talked about setbacks and decibel levels. My fear on the decibel levels, if you guys set a decibel level, who's gonna police that? Let's say whatever the decibel level is, who's gonna police that? And once that center is up and running, there's no changing that,
There is something in our ordinance, our draft that would address that. And it's the same language we use for the sound, the noise engineer to do a study and review that on a regular basis. I think it was a
Every 3 years.
3-year term.
I don't wanna take up too much of your time, but
Okay,
I would like to see, personally, we would like to see, and Dale talked about too. 1,500 feet, 1,500 feet to the nearest dwelling from something like that. I would say that's what I would like to see. I mean, 1,320 feet would be a quarter mile. And 1,000 feet was brought up, but I'd like to see 1,500. That's our thoughts. Everything, Dale.
No, probably, yeah, that's. Especially with the dust man. I guess that's important, that would be very important. But I guess it depends upon, yeah,
I don't know, I did,
You know,
yeah, the amount of noise, yeah, I just have to be around some of the other ones, so I hope it wouldn't be like that, but who knows? After it starts.
like Brian said, they're gonna try and get by with the cheap, well, that's their, they're gonna try and get by with the cheapest thing that they can get in there, you know.
Well, Charlie White already said that in the supervisor's meeting, correct? That they tried to come through with the cheapest level, but these pods would cost $300,000 more, $60,000
Depending
more.
on what they went with.
It would be approximately $300,000 more for them. So you know that they were trying to get by already with the cheapest one here. And told that to the supervisors, correct?
Yes. I mean, it's like, basically anybody's building, you know. We all try to, you know, we want these certain things, but again, you're gonna try to do it for the most economical way you can do it. You
That's
know?
part of doing business.
Yeah, that's part, right. So, you know, again, I think the noise decimal would be
But-
your big concern for your neighboring residents,
Absolutely.
you know.
And hopefully that'll be addressed.
You know, like the full standard 50 decimal, you know.
Ours might even be less.
Well, I'm saying, I don't think that's a good deal because, you know, as three-fourths of us who all live in the country because we like the peace and quiet. If I wanted to live with noise, I would have moved to Dallas.
That's our whole deal, we, you know, we don't have any noise right now. Why would we want this? Very much right now.
I got a question. Has there been any further interest in Jackson County after last month?
Not further, but I know there was additional that was stacked up. There was, 3 other sites that were being considered. Not all necessarily by, our, but there was another company that was, shown interest beforehand.
Okay, that's no, yeah.
Okay.
I have one brief question about the decimal level. Has there been any computer modeling or anything where we know what the different sound mitigation measures, like the water cooling? I know there's that hybrid thing, there's that submerged thing, and there's the air that's really shooting out. Do we know
I don't
anything about that?
I don't know anything about that. Although from what we're hearing, not to be punny, but from what we're hearing, the alcohol cool is supposed to be the quietest.
That's quieter than the water pool. I was just curious, like, you know, why they drilled the well first and then made that water pool, you know, was. I don't know what you call it.
You're talking the one there, and where?
Marshall, there's a facility at first, the one that I actually.
Yeah, yeah.
gave the address.
Yeah,
They drilled a well there. and
yes,
that's-
that one's water.
Is that on?
Yeah.
The county requested?
Pardon me?
Did the county request it?
No. To the best of my knowledge.
They're experimenting with different technologies.
Yeah. Well,
You know, and you know, some of it too, there's a learning curve. I mean, I'm guessing. At first they want to get by the cheapest way possible, but then you learn that that's not the best way possible, especially when you're gonna be close to houses, so you change your game. And it looks like they're learning from the mistakes and they're changing their game.
Yeah.
To be more accepted.
Yeah, and that's why they're talking about putting it inside a building rather than, you know, in pods, and which would meet the same requirements as an A1 building. You know, so, but anyway, that's. I think last month sent a pretty clear message on, you know, to the industry, local industry where Jackson County sits, so, you know, that's something, so.
Yeah.
Oh, and if I can, if you guys are done, I was just gonna
Yeah,
bring
great.
something else to them.
Thank you,
But-
thank you all
Yeah.
for doing your job.
The one thing too, and I kind of had, knowledge of this beforehand, Tom down in Clinton County had not, did not know about data processing facilities and data mining, Bitcoin mining. He was one of those counties where they just made a application and was very vague about what they were doing, and it made it sound like it was part of the utilities. Tom issued a permit. And it has since been revoked. He got it to the, now he got a moratorium in place, got it put in front of the Board of Supervisors, they revoked that permit. So, and we know there's other counties, same thing. And I even had one zoning administrator, it's like, why didn't they catch you? Why, how did you know? Well, because we have that other company that had reached out to us last July. Otherwise, we could have been in the same situation.
And that's what the reason this Tom tried to make it very clear from the outset that Wachovia Valley Electric was simply the electric provider. We were not in partnership at all with them.
Right. So, but anyway, they have that situation taken care of down there. They got in front of it. It had to get to the Board of Supervisors to, but Tom got it to them, so this could happen. But, there's been other counties that have been blindsided just because they didn't know the language. But we were fortunate. I'm glad we weren't one of those counties because we could have been. If it hadn't been for that first company that reached out to us.
That was all.
No, sir, it was not.
No, you know, in Clinton County.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what it is.
But they were just taking care of business the way they took care of business, and they didn't lie. They didn't tell any mistruths. They just made it work for them.
And Lori,
Optimize the grid.
when you said that, these aren't, they aren't using big tracts of land. Did you
No.
hear Charlie say they have one that's 400 acres in Wisconsin?
Oh,
So they are.
okay. I didn't hear that. Okay, but,
That might have been the night you were,
too homesick.
yes. So,
But that's, yeah, we're
That's-
talking apples and oranges with the scale that they were talking at Spring.
I know, but again, I'm just saying, we don't know that when she said they're only small, you don't know that they could get their foot in.
They only can get as big as there's power available.
Right.
It's kind of like the people that were concerned about wind turbines coming up everywhere. Well, gotta be close to someplace to connect to. So they don't just pop up anywhere, just like these. We're probably small potatoes, so I can read Mike says,
We got another agenda. We'll go on to the next item. Other business.
nothing.
Nothing for you.
No,
Next meeting.
well, I might, no, I better not, because I have a supervisor sitting here and I haven't given her notice yet, so never mind.
I can wait.
No, I'm kidding. But, they're gonna get my notice tomorrow,
Okay, how long?
August 1st.
August 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't accept it. You must revoke.
I'll accept taking her off the payroll when she can stay working.
So,
Next meeting, May 19th.
yes,
Right.
sir, yep. And I know we're gonna have a case.
Okay.
And we will run our case, upfront, before any of our other,
Okay.
ordinance stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, as long as it's acceptable to the commission, sorry.
That's the way it should be.
Anybody want to move for adjournment?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you all.
I will tell you.